And a big welcome to everybody around the screen. As I said earlier, it's just so exciting every single time to see you streaming in from New Zealand, from South Africa, from California, from Lithuania, from Vienna, from all over the place. It's really great. Tonight's 50-50 session is going to be a little different from others. We're going to be splitting it up into two parts. Because as you know, or you probably know, 2023 was our 10th anniversary. So we're going to spend just a little time looking back. And then the next part will be looking forward into 2024. And the role that you're going to play in that is the most important one that we can possibly have. And that is to ask you for feedback. Feedback. Because that's the way we evolve, that's the way the world evolves, and that's the way how organizations improve themselves. But because there are many newcomers on the screen tonight, allow me to say a few words about the Pass It On Network. The Pass It On Network, which is now also known as PION, and we call ourselves pioneers because that's what we feel we are in this world of rapid demographic change. 10 years ago, in 2013, Dr. Jan Heibley and I founded this grassroots network of positive aging advocates. PION champions the rights of older people. We stand for self-advocacy and we contribute to the adaptation of society to the challenges of longevity and demographic shifts. And we do this through exactly our 50-50 online conversations, our monthly gazette, and that's where we tell all the stories of the pioneers around the world who are all working in their own ways to further these causes. We do that through our regional networks and get together whenever it's possible. And then, of course, we have the YouTube channel where all our 50-50 recordings are posted. We take great pride in our global community of pioneers in over 65 countries, collectively addressing critical issues facing older people everywhere. This anniversary year, we've been very busy pursuing the still glaring societal gaps that affect older adults everywhere. The issues that ignite our sense of social justice are the ones that surround us in our communities. Our advocacy ancestors like Maggie Kuhn have shown the way. I'm not going to take you through everything that happened in 2023. That would be far too long, but I would like to just recall some of the highlights. First of all, we had 12 webinars, 12 50-50 conversations covering a wide range of subjects, both geographically and in terms of content. We had them from Singapore, Nigeria, Buenos Aires, California, and the subjects ranged from how to rally voices for a UN convention on the human rights of older people. What the world needs now is an economia amable, which was put on for us by Sylvia Zweifel from South America. Aging with dignity. And then we had Nigeria's policy innovations towards enhanced senior well-being. We talked about digital equality for older people, and that was very exciting because we had it from three different countries, including one of our presenters who's here today, Richard Adler from the Silicon Valley. We talked about in times of distress, how we could support older people. And that was Famada from South Africa who presented that and really gave us an excellent presentation of what we should do. Mm-hmm. Then we talked about age discrimination. And then we went into a really fascinating session on how AI is shaping the future of aging. And then we've already started this year with an excellent presentation from Dr. Cameron Camp on a pathway to empowerment, the Montessori approach to dementia. As I said, all of these are on our YouTube channels. We now have 37 videos up there. And unfortunately, we don't have very many subscribers. We have under 100 subscribers, and one of my objectives is to get that number right up. So if you can spread the voice and the news about that, that would be absolutely exciting. So what we've been doing also during this year on the human rights front, we supported the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People in their various campaigns. Then Osnat and I went to the United Nations, and we had the great pleasure of meeting several pioneers from around the globe. Himanshu Rath from India, Pauletchenko from Cameroon, Eli Mugawesha from Rwanda, and others. It was a very interesting session, and I actually spoke at the United Nations. It was rather intimidating, but we did, and we spoke about the Pass It On network. And we made links with Bridget Sleep, who then later came and spoke to us during the year. And we had a very interesting period of having an intern working for us with our Southern African network. And then we met him through the university in Metz, and through their particular program, which was to do an international study across 17 countries to find out how the rights of older people were handled during the COVID crisis. And in March, there was their preliminary findings, and then they're going to present their final findings in Montreal in June this year. So if anyone's interested in joining them, we'll give you the details. We went to Prague to attend the EURAG Council meetings, and then we've been involved also with older persons awareness days around the world, including in Mauritius with Vijay Nairodu from our network. And then as far as Africa is concerned, we've been quite involved there. We've kept track of Nigeria's leading role because Nigeria has just developed a very good policy. And they've got a very dynamic person in the form of Dr. M.M. Omakara, who's rolling out this policy. We've been developing our Southern African network, and there's a lot of activity there, both in Botswana, in Zambia, and in South Africa, and in Lesotho. And we also had a very good success with Elizabeth Eissel's Experience Incubator. And in fact, on this Friday, Famada, who's been rolling it out in her TAFTA organization, has invited me to attend the final presentation of how the whole pilot project went. And then I could really go on and on, but I'm not going to go on and on. I think I would like maybe just to have a little bit of feedback from you. How did any of these events impact you? What kind of reaction do you have? Are we going in the right direction? Osnat, what do you think?
Yeah, I something that stood out for me during this year, just from a selfish point of view, when we went to New York, I got to meet people outside the Zoom room. I was surprised how tall and how short some of them were. It's just a different kind of experience, and it deepened my relationships with the pioneers that I met over Zoom and in other situations that we have together. It was so nice to spend time with them and meet them up close and personal, and get excited together about new possibilities within the realm of rights for all the people and outside that. So I'm really excited about what happened with us in 2023, and I'm really looking forward to 2024. which we'll probably talk about together here in a few minutes. But I'm really curious also for the rest of our pioneers is what stood out for you in the 2023 with regard to Pass-it-on Network.
Thank you, Rosnat Moira. I'm a relatively new member to this group, so I can't really comment on the content of what happened last year, but what I can say is how impressed I am with the breadth of the international component of the group. I think it is wonderful that we have so many countries represented and pulling in the same direction. Hopefully the force of the breadth of our group will have an impact in terms of what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Mary Jo, I think you were next.
Thank you, Osnat. I am, like the previous speaker, absolutely impressed with the amount of activity and the breadth of contacts. What strikes me is how under the radar all this work is. And I understand the work that you did in New York and some of the conference work, but I wonder if moving forward, a priority of the network wouldn't be to develop some sort of a public relations plan, a media plan, a website. I frequently tell people about the Pass-it-on network, but I'm not sure. And I know you have a website, but it feels a little passive. So I'm just thinking how to promote all this really good work. So that's my thought.
Oh, thank you.
Peter and then Hans.
So, thank you, Moira, on that, and everybody for this. Yes, I agree. Global perspective. I think it's phenomenal. The highlights for me, which I would like to carry into the next year, were when we had Indigenous people and young people in the space. I had something to do with that, so I'm speaking a little bit to the own programming I contributed. But I think next year is going to be hot as hell. That is to say, the climate changes need to be part of our agenda because it's both children and older people who are going to die, literally, as a function of the fact that it's going to be a hotter year, perhaps, than it was this year. And we all know that this year was the hottest around the world, not in all places. So I would urge us to continue this broadening out that Osnat mentioned, not just to focus on right, but responsibilities, and responsibilities that are shared across the generations, and to recognize the terrible harm we've done to Indigenous peoples and the huge, important, wise lessons we can learn from them. So let's continue putting the future in our future. And I thank you for giving me this time to make this comment. Thank you. And thanks again for all your efforts, guys.
Thanks, Peter.
Yes, I'm unmute now. Hi, hello everybody. Hans, I'm Hans Christian. I've been involved in the University of the Third Age. That was established in Reykjavik for, well, it's 13 years ago about. This was about the time when I retired from my last position in the world, and I found Pass-it-on network on the web, on the internet, and registered to get information. And then Moira called me and said, "Wouldn't you like to be a liaison for Iceland?" And I couldn't say no. And then I never regretted that, because this has been a wonderful time with you guys, and I'm so. What can I say? This has been such a wonderful work you are doing. I have been in Iceland, the University of the Third Age. It started in 2012 with 49 founding members. Now we are closing to 1,500, and we are having activities every week. We are publishing a newsletter on the internet, and I have been very much using the connection, the network, pass it on. It has been the window to the world for us, and listening to what is happening in other countries and learning from it. And there is a lot to learn, and it has been a wonderful experience. What I have been doing the last years, and I have not asked permission, but I hope I'm doing okay when I am linking to the sites of Pass It On Network and the YouTube channel, etc., in our newsletter. And we publish this newsletter every month, and I have been trying to promote this and get some more people interested in following it. I don't know how I succeeded, because it's very difficult to get any reactions. But just to finalize this, thank you very much for a very interesting period, and keep on doing the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans.
Tom, and then Brian.
I'm Tom Model from Boston, and I think I've been involved, Moira, correct me, I think it was January 2021 or 2020. And the first year I was involved as a newcomer to Pass It On Network, along with Margaret Young and Rick Moody and Richard Adler, in trying to work with you and Jan and a few other people to look at how more formal structuring might be of benefit. And after a year, we looked at a lot of things, and the decision was made to more or less go on with the form of Pass It On Network. And I think that year of thought and work and looking at elements was productive. And I've been, really, I'm not amazed, but just feeling wonderful about the way in which PION has developed. And I congratulate you along with OSNET and other people who are helping you. I think what you're doing and the way in which you're running the 50/50 programs, which started, I guess, a couple of years ago now or so, is wonderful. I can't comment on the particular, as someone said, content of the kind of meetings and so forth that you have outlined, Moira. But I know from the titles they've had significant subject matter, and to continue that. In terms of, someone else remarked about broadening the awareness and recognition of PION, that's a very difficult thing to do. There's what I've learned over these years since actually becoming involved with PION was my first introduction to the international community. Beyond the national community in the US, is that there's a very large number of organizations doing wonderful work, like the International Federation on Aging, for example, which is perhaps one of the larger, more formal ones. It's very difficult to get that recognition and that raise the visibility, but I think that suggestion is a good one, because what PION is right now, I think, is very important. And I too continue to mention PION and educate people about PION, but ways in which to do that in a more structured process manner, I think, could be very useful, because what you're doing is so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And then
we're going to go to Helen, and then we're going to pause for a minute and give Moira an opportunity to just clue us about 2024, and then we'll come back to speak more about everything. So Helen and Famada will kind of box you into the next segment.
Well, I just want to congratulate you. I know how challenging it has been in terms of transitioning. Jan is on the call, one of the original founders, and Moira, you've done a superb job, and OSNET taking on the various responsibilities that you have really enlightened, I think, the audience, or brought you to a different level. The 50/50 is excellent. Unfortunately, I can't always be here, but I am in spirit. And I want to make one comment that is totally out of the realm of importance, perhaps, But this is the only network that I have participated in that has to do with aging, that has an equal number of men as there are women. And I think that that's significant, and it's necessary that we include, that we're always inclusive. So I'm not sure what the formula is, Moira, Osnat, and what it is you're doing right. It could be the fact that we're international, but honestly, there are more men even on this call than I've seen on the last 20 calls I've been on networking elsewhere. So keep it up, whatever the mystery formula is, and it enriches the conversation. So I appreciate everybody's presence. Thank you for continuing the work despite the challenges everywhere.
Right. Thank you so much, Helen. Right.
So
let's
what's happening in 2024?
Right. Well, we haven't decided firmly what's happening in 2024 because that's why we organized this 50-50, so that you could help us to express what you thought and draw from your wisdom. But I think, you know, everybody around the screen absolutely knows that at the moment we're about 700 million older people plus 60 in the world. And in the next 20 to 30 years, that's going to go up to 2 billion people, 20% of the global population. And it's going to change everything. And I think that the paradigm shift hasn't really taken place. We know full well that longevity has now been mainstreamed. And we've got all sorts of, you know, top people and universities, Harvard included, everybody talking about longevity and new products that are coming out and whatnot. But I think that the glaring gaps remain. And those glaring gaps are solitude, purpose, what people are doing, and how they're feeling about being aging. The whole question of ageism is a huge issue. And these are issues that longevity per se can't fight. It's the chemical companies that can't fight it. The only people who can fight it are ourselves. And I think that this is where the big paradigm shift has to come out. We have to start seeing ourselves more and more and more as powers and people who can change things and not sort of sit back and just accept. And this can be on any level, I think, as small and as modest as it can be, or as big as we want to make it. But if we can just make those challenges on a daily basis of standing up, speaking up, and being counted for, I think that this can change the whole world. But unfortunately, at this point in time, I think that people on a general, obviously not the people around the screen, because the people around the screen are advocates, but generally, unfortunately, the general population hasn't yet woken to their power. You know, what happens if we really stand up and start demanding our power? And I'm going to the UK later this month, and I'm trying to make an appointment with the people who set up a 70 organization coalition to ask the British government to create a ministry for older people. And I know that around the world at the moment, there are about 7 countries that do have ministries for older people. And I think New Zealand is one of those countries. But the whole point is that this demographic shift is of major importance. And it can no longer just be treated as something that's just sort of going to pass, because it's not going to pass. So the things that are happening this year, you know, it's this whole demographic aspect that needs to be understood by all of us. It's the kind of things that people are doing already that we can all build on, like, for example, Paul Ward's new book that's just come out. It is really an excellent book. I've read it, and it's got so many different aspects to it. There's all the work that Chip Connolly's doing. You know, all of us need to be together and build on each other and help each other to grow, because each of us is talking to different audiences. So in 2024, one of the things that I would particularly like to develop is our partnerships with different organizations. And from Pass It On Network, we're already in partnership with, and I want to develop that further with ACAP, which is the Coalition for Active Aging in Asia. So these are just some of the thoughts that I would like to share with you before we go into breakup rooms, because today's 50/50 is really all about you. We want to know what you are facing on your particular fronts, how you see it, and how we can use our common wisdom to move forward together. So Osnat, could we pop off into breakout rooms? And can you give people the questions?
Yes, the question is actually quite simple, as Moira just posed it, is how do I, as a pioneer, see myself and Pass It On Network in 2024? And these are ideas. Some of you already voiced some ideas about better PR, promoting our different offers and tools to as many people as possible. Really, Moira is doing a lot of stuff, and we definitely would like to help her and get some more local initiatives that we can feed back into Pass It On Network and let everybody in the world, all the Pass It On Network pioneers, benefit from this. So keep this thing in mind as we are going into a 15 minutes breakout room. There'll be about 4 people in each breakout room. When you come back, we're just going to ask you, what is it that any of you, it's not a reporting back, but what kind of things you think could enrich Pass It On Network in 2024, and what stood out to you from your conversation, and how would you like to tap into this? Yes, it always feels too short, huh? Yeah, welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully it was interesting and came up with a lot of interesting things to share. And we could use the next 15 minutes or so to, if you can kind of capture whatever you have to say in headlines rather than a very, very long paragraph, then we'll hear from a lot more people. But what's in the conversations that you had, what was something that was important to share with the whole group? And you can raise your digital hand or let us know in chat that you want to speak. Sheila?
Yes. Well, I was very impressed with, I hope I pronounce her name, Famata Shamam, who is from, let's see, someplace in Africa.
Right at the bottom. So.
And she and her group are doing something where they are, and I probably, it's called I See You, but she has it in Zulu, I think. SAWUBONA. And I think just that phrase, I see you, that's what we all need to promote, because people say, oh, she's a little old lady, about somebody, or a little old man. Like, that cuts us down to 3 feet high or something. We have so much to give, and we want people to see us and care about us. So ageism needs to be looked at and so on. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Sheila. Mark.
Hi, thanks. I'm so glad to be here. It's my first time. I met Maura online probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and in our small group, first of all, there was 4 men and 1 woman, so that continues that theme. And we had someone from the Netherlands who's created a electronic support system app, which he is working. We had someone from a suburb of Boston who's in charge of the local aging commission and is doing work educating in town. I myself am a very similar position in Oak Park, Illinois, where I'm the chairperson of the Aging in Communities Commission, and we're trying to build a town without ageism and educate Village Hall as well as the entire community. And we raise the level of the ocean, all the ships go up. So, and then I'll stop. But the last quick thing is, I think one important topic to consider for 2024 and something we're working on in my courageous community is ageism is a public health issue.
Yep.
And there's tremendous research. We're working with Dr. Becca Levy, who from Yale, who wrote a book called Breaking the Age Code, which shows evidence-based research corroborating the health implications of our attitudes of aging. And I think that's a good way to focus education around this, and it plays to people's self-interest, which oftentimes, because of internalized ageism, we don't give credence to. I could talk for hours. I'm going to stop, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom and then Hans.
In our group, several things came up, and if I recall correctly, Moira, I think what we were trying to identify were PION goals, objectives, and discussion topics for 50-50 exploration. And Paul raised the topic, which he has a book out on, about midlife stage of the lifespan, the changes in the meaning. I don't know, Paul, if that's a fair statement of what you said. If not, you can add your comment. I won't take very long. Jan talked about the need to both educate relative to understanding and for preparation purposes relative to disaster response among older people in terms of their survival and their well-being. Jan also brought up the importance of intergenerational relationships and discussions, and I pointed out that Peter Whitehouse is very much focused on intergenerative as opposed to the purely process intergenerational, but the intergenerative creation of ideas and interactions. And then a couple of other ones, which were things that I mentioned in terms of, was brought up earlier, the collaboration with other organizations, I think, is extremely important from the standpoint of raising the awareness and profile of PION, and also in the from the context of networking. And then things I'm realizing more and more, to think global, but act local. Take the intellectual discussions and translate it into actual on the ground actions. And then finally, a topic which I'm involved in with Peter and Richard in particular, and Rick Moody, is exploration of the AI impacts on aging, both the pros, many, and the cons, many. That's all if anybody wants to add, I may have forgotten something.
You know, Tom, that this what you said and what people said before you is creating these connections locally and globally. This is what we're here for, and this is what this network is for: is then it's a call for everybody. If you make connections, if you bring your PION seed into another organization, please come back and share it with every pioneer. We can do it in our Gazette, and we can do it also here in this forum. This is what this network is all about, is not only to bring news to you, but also share news with one another. So I'd like to throw this as a target for 2024 is be more active in feeding Pass It On Network back with the things that you do, with the connections that you make that can inspire everybody to do it in their own locale, in their own context.
Yes,
And,
very much. But let me be
I'm sorry.
clear. What I mean goes beyond that. These meetings are the intellectual discussions. One reads books, one talks to other people. But what I mean by think global, which is what we're doing, but act local, translating the discussions and the activities into actual on-the-ground activities, which unfortunately, fortunately, whatever, requires a lot of dedication and time. And that's something every organization struggles with.
And individuals. So this is to double the call to everybody, is act locally, is what you do in your own context to make quality of life and life better for all ages. Hans, and then Brian, and then Tom.
Thank you. We didn't decide on who should say something, but I think there were three of us in the group. Lyle from New Zealand and Grace from Cape Town. And what I found very interesting in our discussion was Grace had some controversial ideas or suggestions. I suggest that she would introduce that for the whole group. Some sort of actively, if I understood you correctly, Grace, actively degrow the family system for the good of the future of the earth and environment. And then we discussed a little bit. Well, I myself found it very important for the future to. It has to do a little bit with age discrimination, but that the economists are always talking about the old people as a burden, which they are not. And the economic models are created on always more and more old people that are relying on the shoulders of less and less young people. And this is completely wrong. It's a question of utilizing the intellectual capacity and other capacity of people. You don't need, you're not stopping your activity when you are 60, 70, even 80 or 90. It's just a question of realizing that older people are not burden except when you let them be. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. Brian, and then Tom.
A number of things. One is just the wonderful diversity of the people who are here, and that they are all doing something. And what I find is I don't know most of what people are doing, what they've created, or what they're interested in. And I'm wondering if that can be something that can become part of the webpage, that we can do that. Two, I'm thinking of the acting locally. There are so many, I've brought this group to every group I belong to. And I'm sad that I don't see the faces that I know. But what I want to say is, I think if we were to actively go out in pursuit of finding who's doing what in our neighborhood or in our communities, in our state or whatever, and go and tell them about the Pioneer Network, pass it on. They at least get on their radar. I would encourage that. And Hans, part of what I hear is with the economists and everything is that there's myths that we build on, and that part of what we're trying to do is change the narrative, and that there is a group out there that's addressing the ageism called Change the Narrative. Becca Levy has been a part of it in her book and such, and there's lots of people. They're just doing remarkable things, but they're also doing little things like creating age-appropriate cards for birthdays and other things. So because so much is ageist out there. And I will just stop there, but I'm very thankful for, hearing what you're doing around the world.
Thank you, Brian. That sends us all the way up to Canada. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. There was a lot of appreciation in the group for what has happened and the diversity, and again, affirmation of the importance of somehow disseminating who this group is and the potentials of it. So that PR question again. Question of whether there was a gap in what has been discussed in the past with regard to spirituality and religion and aging, affirming the holistic aspect of who we are as humans, getting a lot of attention appropriately, but wondering if this was a blind spot that might come up in 2024. We also took note of wondering how globally diverse, culturally diverse the group is. We know that there's been more representation globally in other meetings than perhaps there is in this particular one, but the importance of hearing different cultural perspectives about aging. I'll leave it there. Maybe the others, if I've forgotten something.
Thank you, Tom. I'm passing it on to Sylvia and then to Lyle.
Thank you, Osnat. Something that we were talking in our group is about the challenge of diversity. There is a rich diversity here with people from so many countries, all of them enthusiastic, passionate, and things like that, willing to contribute, actually contributing. And PION attracts all of us. And what happened is that some people think that PION has to have a broader scope, a broader, I don't know, objective or something like that, than only the rights of older people. So perhaps it is like that. And also someone told that there is actually a bit difficult to motivate people to really do something. Okay, that's something that came up there. But when we have this challenge of diversity with so many different views of ways to contribute, there is also a lot of, it's a well of inspiration and possibilities to articulate at the local level with bringing something to PION with other organizations, or at the local level, global level, worldwide level, also, including the economy. Economy is grounded in culture. So that's super important to acknowledge, because the economy and the politic we have is grounded in how we think and see and interpret our world. So there is a lot of room to transform this in the so many ways we can contribute. Yeah, that's it. I hope I shared what I resonated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Lyle.
Yes, I just want to pick up on a broader topic, going back to our first feedback session, but looking ahead to 2024. The comment was made that PION needs to be more structured and have a more sort of organizational approach. I don't think that's the way to go at all, actually. And I think Osnat made the point that this is a network, and a network is precisely not an organization. And even having Zoom and its very democratic access sort of demonstrates that. But I want to introduce a term I've just thought of, which I will donate to the organization, which is not an organization, but a network. It is ionosphere, okay? I see that ionosphere, looking at iPhone, so it must be right, is that, you know, that layer, part of the Earth's upper atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. And it's important because it reflects and modifies radio waves used for communication and navigation. What a marvelous metaphor for what we're trying to do as a network to sort of amplify those things. And looking ahead to this year, I thought our last session that we had was great. It showed some evolution and the approach. We had breakout sessions like today, which I think is a key part of this, or of any network. A lot of time spent on the small group. But let's develop the ionosphere by modeling that and making sure that by that last meeting, it was largely sort of an interview approach, largely sort of planned spontaneity, if you like. It wasn't a formal one-way webinar or approach. It was more interactive with the help of the speakers and Osnet's questions. We all got involved in the whole thing. And if we model that approach, that's the one to take out to the broader community via our other networks. And what we could do to add to that impact is not just make the videos available. They can be too long and too intimidating, but also add some brief highlights, a 2-minute on this, a 3-minute on that, little segments, and also perhaps have a section which adds a few web links that we can all contribute to and sometimes do via chat, but they tend to get lost after the meeting. So if we have some good web links, it just might be, there it is, that's the URL to follow through if you want to. So the more we make it interactive among ourselves and model that good networking approach, the more we'll draw other people in and amplify our resources in the ionosphere. Thank you.
Ionosphere, that's so cool. Thank you, Lyle, for all these good suggestions. I encourage actually everybody to look like maybe 4 days after today, look in your mail for our highlights letter with all kinds of links and things like this. But, you know, if you want to do more than this, please let us know and we could use some help anytime.
Sure.
I pass it on to Richard, and after this, we're going to, Moira will do a recap of where we are today, and then we'll close it formally and keep the conversation open for another 15 minutes. So, Richard, your headlines and highlights, please.
Just very briefly, just inspired by what Lyle just said, and also a comment that Moira made at the beginning about an effort in the UK to ask the government to create a ministry of aging. And I just had this sort of kind of crazy idea that we might constitute ourselves as a global ministry for aging. Nobody's taken on that role. Why don't we just do that? I mean, whether we do it formally or just in our minds, I think it would kind of make a point about the potential power that we have. So it's just a sort of a crazy idea that I just wanted to put on the table along with the Pionosphere.
I like this. Everyone is a member in the Global Ministry of Aging.
In the new Pionosphere.
Wow,
I think if you're a little bit outrageous, if you're trying to attract attention, it's one good way to do it.
Yeah,
Right.
this is cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just quickly, this is an example of the needed thinking outside the box, because we are in a new phase for our species. We've never had this longevity before, and doing things the way we've been doing them for the last 50 years or so is just not going to work. It's not sustainable. So we have that responsibility to think outside the box stuff.
So a lot of collaborative stuff today. Moira, maybe you're bookending this conversation, and then we'll have some administrative stuff and move on to our free 15 minutes.
Right. Well, it's been a very, very rich session. I was very happy to be in the breakout room that I was, and Peter was very adamant that his future belonging to Poseidon Network would be a bit contingent, not a bit, but would be contingent to the fact that we incorporated far more on two issues. One was obviously the climate issue, which is going to get worse and worse and worse, and how we can actually help people. And that was where we had an excellent webinar with FMADA, and the whole issue of intergeneration. And these two issues are obviously going to come up more and more. So I think what we must do now is absorb what you've all said, because there've been lots and lots of very good ideas, and then plot our path for 2024. We've got the tools, but what we're very short of, and that is arms and legs and hands and minds to lend a hand, because it's very short. And I really thank very much Osnat and Penny Bear, who's our web wizard, who's never with us here, but she's the one who puts it all into excellent form. But we could very much do with help. So maybe we could think of having a small group that would apply their minds to how we could become better known and how we could spread. And I think that would be a very good thing. And then what I would envisage then is to have plenary sessions like this, and then the groups could go off and at the end come back and report back on their activities, because one cannot do it all alone, number one. And number two, we need the diversity in thinking. And I'd just like to end by saying that I'm sorry our friends from Zimbabwe and Botswana couldn't be here. It's probably because of load shedding, but we've got very big plans going on there. And FMADA, I don't know if you'd just like to touch a word very quickly about the Fulbright scholar that you've managed to get for Southern Africa, because that's going to be very important.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, we've been, so in the spirit of collaboration, we've worked with the Commonwealth Association for the Aging and the Fulbright organization to get a Fulbright scholar to come through to South Africa in June to run a program on aging, and with a particular focus on dementia. It's a train the trainer program. So the whole point of this program is to look at building up capacity in terms of the workforce, but also in terms of community networks as well. It's a program that we are rolling out to our partners free of charge. So people are not expected to pay for the Train the Trainer program, but obviously to get to South Africa would be at their cost. But we're really quite excited that we are able to think global and act local. So it comes back to this whole idea around taking all of these global possibilities and localizing it and domesticating it within the context of where we are at. We will be capturing our journey in terms of Fulbright and the processes we've gone through in order to get approval, so that we can share it with other network members. So should they wish to continue or embark on that journey, we could share with them our experience and help them along as well. So it's been pretty exciting, and we're looking forward to having our Fulbright scholar, Dr. Renu Varugis, come through and do the training in June.
Thanks so much, Famada, for sharing that. That's very, very, very important. Yes.
So thank you very much for being here today. And
Osnet, can I maybe just kick off? I just want to share something. I think just reflections on some of the conversations, and we're talking about what's the value and, you know, what are some of the sort of takeouts from this. I think the one aspect around the Pass It On network is that it leaves you with the sense that you're not alone. So working in the aging field, which in the context of where I'm working in the nonprofit sector, working with older people is not seen as one of the sexiest jobs alive. So sometimes you're sort of trudging along, trying to find solutions in working with something that is not popular. But I think through the Pass It On network, you get the idea that you're not alone and there's always a solution. I think every time I've come to one of these conversations, my head's just swimming with possibilities, because I think that's what this network does. It ignites the possibilities of what can be achieved. And I think, you know, that's something we must take away from this as well. So while we network, we also ignite thinking. And while we talk about it being the ministry of aging, I think we mustn't take away from the fact that this space is a thinking space. We think about different things and we reflect on different things. And while we're thinking locally, we then act. Are we thinking globally? We think we act locally. So, you know, for me, that's a very tangible takeout that I take from this space. I think the other thing as well is that I think someone mentioned there's just so much happening. You know, we make this assumption that when people retire, that's it. But there's just so much happening, and we really must keep the conversation going. And my last point is that, you know, sometimes we bemoan the fact, and I think someone spoke about Grace in Cape Town and about how we look at our family systems and we want to reignite this. But I think, and here maybe I'm being controversial, I think we need to move away from lamenting all the things that have changed. You know, family values have changed, the old family system has broken down, and we just bemoan all of this. And for me, that's not helpful. I think if you actually take it from the perspective of saying that we are evolving, and as society we evolve, and we evolve within the context of what makes sense at that point in time, it then changes the way we think about things. And we stop coming at it from a deficit kind of thinking pattern to really saying we're evolving. Let's evolve into something that we want. So that's just my little comments around that as well.
Bravo.
I wish I could bottle what you just said.
Right.
Yeah, you see, this is what the network does. It ignites all of these things in the brain. So my cells are dancing at the moment.
Sheila?
Yes, I'm trying to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, as I've mentioned, I've been doing for many years Legacy Film Festival on Aging. Every year we do a film festival and show films from around the world that we find or people send to us. The first year I did it in San Francisco, because before that I did it in Chicago. I had a brochure, and on the brochure, it had pictures of older people, and it said Legacy Film Festival on Aging. A PR person who we were thinking of hiring looked at it. She pointed, some of you have heard this story. She said, take that word aging off there. And I just started laughing because I said, that's the point. This is about aging, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. And so over the years, I have seen an evolution, but there are still many people who hide from the word, even if they are older. So I'm encouraged because there's a great number of people who are older.
One more.
Thank you. Mark and then Brian.
There, I'm unmuted. So I just heard there was a comment about the next meeting having to do with tourism. And I put in the chat a link to an article about sex tourism in Gambia by older women. So yes, there's tourism and older people and taking cruises, but there's all kinds of tourism. And this is the topic that we are talking about next Wednesday at our voluntary Zoom drop-in. And we just have like 25 people that show up and we talk about a different topic every week. But no coincidence, your topic next week has to do with tourism, and I'm not undercutting that or criticizing it. What I am doing is saying there's all kinds of tourism, and so the women from England that go to Gambia, how about the men in Gambia who have to do this? Okay, so there's all angles, and it has to do with aging. And I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry I took advantage of that moment. I'll stop.
Mark, this is wonderful. I hope you're going to come next month and you hear the other kind of tourism that Adrian Berg is going to speak about. It will really speak to you. Brian and Doug, and I think after this, we're going to close formally. Brian, you're on mute.
Yeah, I saw it. Took me a second. Famada, am I saying it right or close? Famada, okay. I think from my perspective, the church is dealing exactly with the issues that you're talking about. And there is a huge kind of dialogue going on so that the whole, in many respects, Christianity is going to be different in the next generation, I think. And it's the same kind of thing that I think that you're talking about, that if we can grab hold of that with saying this is the evolution that we're going to strive for. I think that's what we need to be saying, that again, like planting seeds and changing things. I could keep going, but I'll stop.
So Doug?
I'm taking just a little bit different path, and I like what everybody has been saying. It's interesting because I touch on a lot of different areas in my job and with what I do. And as large a cohort that we are at our age, we are also largely invisible. And I think we really have to remember that. Individually, people might recognize us, but as a group, people don't. As a chairperson of our Council on Aging, there's a town of around 10,000 people. It's a suburb of Boston, a nice suburb of Boston. And it's remarkable how much the town really doesn't know that we are here. We are 2,300 people in town out of 10,000 that are over 65. In our school system, which is a K-8 school system, we have 1,200 kids. Everybody knows about the school system, but it was a total shock when I went to the select board or our town meetings and stuff and say, there's 2,300 seniors in town. And it turns out that UMass Boston, which is a really pretty big university, has a gerontological institute. And one of the things that they do is do townwide assessments. And they look at the demographics, they look at a variety of things. They do in-person interviews of people in the public, town managers, recreation departments, all those normal departments, and then compile what they see as an assessment of where the town is going in 5 or 10 years. What are some of the issues? And it's all these senior issues come up. All the seniors say, we don't have adequate housing. There's not adequate transportation. There's all this. And I know I'm very unpolitical. I don't like getting involved in politics. But at a local level, you have to understand this has a huge influence on what your life is going to be like, because they're making big capital equipment decisions. Do we build a new senior center for $20 million, or do we add a new school? Well, if you have 1,200 students and the population is growing at 4 or 5% a year, and the senior population is going to be growing at 25% a year, where are you going to be in 5 years? How are you going to allocate all this? So public policy, and we really haven't talked about it, I think is very, very important for how people are going to view seniors. First of all, they really have to know that we exist in this large number. And I'll tell you, I speak at Rotaries, I speak at Lions clubs and all these places, and they're always constantly amazed, even though they're much older, how big an issue the issues that we're dealing with here are. So I think, I really love the idea of a ministry. I was hoping it would be going to be a paid position, but I'm probably a little off base on that. However, I think we need to think about public policy in some ways, how we can have maybe our own sort of, I don't want to say a manifesto in a crazy sense, but just something that says, hey, these are some of the things that are really important to us, and how this is how we look at the world, or how with a very diverse viewpoint. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I do think that public policy issues, even at the most very local level, are very, very important for people to start thinking about and start addressing. That's where a lot of the sort of the rubber hits the road.
This was brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. Lyle, and after you, we are going to part ways here.
Okay, well, just a comment. I'm not too sure about how far we should go with public policy, but it's certainly very important. So long as we balance private policy, and I think Moira at the start, in her excellent introduction, talked about the issues facing people not aging, but maturing. And she mentioned things like solitude and so forth. But Brian, speaker before last, made a comment about the decline of Christianity. And he comes from a country which seems to be riven right now with some issues to do with the politicization of religion. But I think he's right. Globally, And you may have come across that movement called the nuns, not the NUNS, but the NONES, those who fill in the census about their religious persuasion by saying none. And that sort of points us in the direction of a lot of uncommitted voters, as the Americans would say, and the issues of personal philosophy, meaning, purpose, and all those things. So long as we balance a focus on public issues with keeping that philosophical, thoughtful stream going, that's a good balance to have, I think.
Sure.
And what a great place to pause until next month.
Right.